Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic indie creator interview. It's your Caper Code, and we're keeping it geekly with our two returning guests, David Taylor and Claire Napier. We're here to break down Wild Nature 1 through 3, the complete graphic novel and hardback, which is going live on Kickstarter May 13th. David, Claire, welcome to the stream. How have you guys been since the last time you've been on?
Great.
Yeah, very
busy.
I actually have not been busy because, as we mentioned just a minute ago, my campaign was on Zoop rather than Kickstarter, and I picked the they do all the fulfillment tier. So I've handed over my files. I don't have to do a thing. David has chosen the hard way. He's sticking with Kickstarter. He's doing it all himself. So sucks to be you.
Claire, let me ask you though, have you done like Kickstarters previously?
I was involved in one, which was really hard and had a lot of problems. And I learned a lot, mainly things that I can't do, which is why I went with Zoop. I have a very, very bad time with the administrative posting, scheduling. My ADHD does not vibe with that. I can't do it, and relying on myself to get it done is foolish. So I really wasn't gonna. I think I probably mentioned this before, but I really wasn't gonna do another crowdfunder until Zoop asked me to. I'm not bold like David. I'm not brave.
I had to ask because hearing your experience on Zoop, I mean, it just sounds like two different parallels, and it's awesome to hear that they've kind of just took the wheel and helped out with a lot of what you struggled with. Would you say the next time you're going to go with Zoop for the next crowdfunding campaign you do?
Well, I mean, probably, yeah. They haven't finished fulfillment yet, so they could mess it all up. I don't know what's going to happen.
Fingers crossed.
But as long as they perform, yeah, probably, yeah.
And congratulations on the successful campaign as well. Always love to see creators, fulfill their dreams and their passion and start to, get that out in the world. When can we expect fulfillment to be fully completed? Do you have any sort of roadmap for that?
I don't actually. I just asked them if it was likely to be done by the middle of this month, because that was what they guessed, the projection. And they said probably not. So I don't really know. But thank you for the congratulations. Obviously, down to my appearance on your show. When I know, I will make sure everyone who needs to know is updated. But I have no info.
No worries at all. And David, we had you on the show as well to talk about Wild Nature. How have you been since the last time you've been on? A little bit shorter, 341, so not quite as long, but still, man. You said the last time you went to a con. How was that experience for you?
It was great. It was in Edinburgh. It was in car parks. The first time I've done a comic convention in an underground car park. So all sorts of new boundaries being pushed. But it was amazing. Met so many great people. And it's one of those, all I've been doing really since the beginning of the year is working on finishing Wild Nature 3. And it doesn't exist in the world outside of if I share pages with Claire or if I'm showing it to one of my friends or whatever. So when people start picking up the previous books and talking about them, it's just lovely. It's okay, this does exist in the world and people do want to read it. It's quite easy to forget that when you're working yourself, you're going, oh no one's going to want to see this. And then somebody's going to say, oh my God, I love it. I want more of that. Mm-hmm. So that was great. It's a great little boost just before the campaign goes live. But yeah, I've just been really, really busy. It's been really good. I've been loving finishing the book. Just so much to get through. It's gigantic. It's 128 pages of story. And that's part 3. I think the last 2 in total are about 150 pages. So it's an absolute monster of a book. So I've just been really busy and just focusing on trying to get that done. And then keeping up a few things. And, like Claire was saying, I was really happy to see your campaign did so well. Because you sent me one of your previous books. I think you'd done it was the Pocket Chiller series.
Yeah.
Which was brilliant. And I just loved it. So I've been really looking forward to this as well. And it's always nice to see the people that you're working with and that have been an influence on you having success on their own. It's a very nice self-perpetuating cycle of working.
It motivates you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, just trying to pay attention, be really grateful for the good stuff that's happening with the comics and then just learning from other people who are doing really well as well as that, because it gives me ideas for what I can do and how I can reach out to different people.
David is very, very good at conventions. He's always there. He's always got his table out, got these lovely banners, lovely setup. He's got levels. It all looks perfect. Talking to people People come back. He builds fans. They come back again. It's great. Very, very slick.
We have worked, my other half, who's also called Claire, but without an I. My first convention was like a couple of years ago. It was in Thought Bubble in Harrogate, and the first day was terrible. It just went so badly. I don't think I sold the thing. It was just, I think one person bought something. He was a Kickstarter backer.
Mm-hmm.
He just ate on the books he didn't have. That was the only person that came up. And Claire was like, how about we do this? And we came up with a few tactics, and everything's. I've learned a lot from her. She's just really smart and so many great ideas for things. And really, since that, it's been, listen, every convention is learning a bit more, like how can we have better conversations, or how can we bring people to the table? But the biggest thing is that how do we be sure people have a really great experience talking to us? It's not even about the books a lot of the times. That how can we just make them enjoy being at the table?
Mm-hmm.
And at the very least, you'll have a good conversation. They might be interested in your work in a way they weren't before. But what we found is that those people would bring other people to the table. They'd have friends who they mentioned to, then those people came over. And that was just a really nice thing. So yeah, we've worked hard. So, and I post a lot about it because it's such a journey every time you do one of that. And I just think I'm quite good at being extrovert, but I'm not built that way. And I find it quite difficult at the beginning of the day, like having to go and really just get performing to an extent. Like, how am I going to get people to talk to me? And then you're like, I don't know if I really want to. I don't know if I want to do that.
It's like you wouldn't do it at your house. Like going out somewhere else to do it is okay, but like I would not want to do this like every day of my life. Like,
no, I'm not built for long-term sales, but the conventions are just great fun, and they make the books feel real the way that. It does.
So you make the effort and it pays off. Like it's really great to see, because it is a thing that so many creators find very hard, selling oneself. Like it doesn't come naturally to a lot of us. But you're such a great example, because you don't like it, but you do it and it's effective. And so I think people seeing that is going to help them too, because they'll know that you don't have to love it. You don't have to feel like it comes naturally. Just making the effort brings in the benefits.
You know, I find it unique how you were explaining the con experiences, like the Keeping It Geekly experience. You know, I have a good time talking to you guys. You guys bring more people to me. You come back on the show. You keep coming back because it's a good conversation. And it's like that. It's just that cycle. It's such a beautiful cycle. And like, for me, sometimes interviewing is so much fun. Talking is so much fun. But it can be daunting, you know. You can be like, okay, well, hopefully I'm not boring today. Hopefully I can hold good conversation so they want to keep coming back. And that's always in the thought of my head. So every time when I'm like, did you guys have a good show? And everyone's like, yeah. I'm like, do they really mean that, though? Are they just saying this not to hurt my feelings? Like, so
don't worry.
what?
I'll spare your feelings, Cody. You're safe.
So with Wild Nature 1 through 3 coming to Kickstarter, what can we expect? I mean, what's gonna be new? You know, what's gonna be the excitement we can expect with this?
So it's the last chance to get the books in hardback. That's probably the big thing. So I mean, there'll be extra content in it. So it's going to be like a 150-page book, hardback. Really, it's full color. The people that do the printing for us, Comics Printing UK, do an amazing job. Absolutely beautiful books. So that's one thing. People will be able to buy the collected edition finally. So all 250 plus pages of story will be in a nice paperback edition. And then I've got some other bits and pieces. I don't have one with me. I should really keep it. I think we've got risograph prints, which is this beautiful old style kind of layered printing technique. It's really bright, bold colors, and it's really neon, just like the book is. So that'll be another thing that'll be available. The final time to get that set. And then probably it'll be my commissions. I'm going to do some more kind of letter-sized commissions for people, because I kind of enjoy doing them. And then people will also have the chance to pay to be part of the book.
Oh, that's so cool.
There's a couple of moments in the book where I can draw them in. One of the other kind of creators that works with Claire, Colin Devonshire, he paid for Wild Nature 2. He's in one of the adverts, getting his arm broken by Rabbit. So things like that. I mean, people, they can pay to be in the book. They might not actually choose what I do to them in the book, but it will never be too awful. But that's a fun thing. So there'll be lots of stuff like that, and the chance to get my previous books as well.
And don't forget, David, cathartic emotions. All of the climax, all of the finale. Tell the story, man.
Yeah, let's hear a little bit about what Wild Nature's about.
Sure, sorry. That's because I wasn't in convention mode for a second. I'm in campaign mode. Like, what am I saying?
Yes, it's like zip the skin suit off, and he's like, all right, let's chat now.
So, got this bomber jacket which has got dragons on it, and that's my wild nature jacket. So I'm not wearing that. That's what's gone wrong. That's a real thing. It's the photo that's on I think you put on the advert for this is that jacket. Anyway, so wild nature, it's like imagine the Running Man meets the Hunger Games. It's a dystopian death sport set in the future Miami, where the killers wear animal masks, and basically you can't get out alive, whatever you try and do. Swan, who's the main character in the book, he was the greatest of all time, but he's trying to retire, and the sport doesn't want to let him go. In the middle of all this, he's like trying to move on, the sport's trying to pull him back in, and no one believes he can change, not his friends, not his fans. But there's one person who does, Alice, and she blames Swan for the death of her brother. So you've got this really complicated relationship between two people that starts with someone looking for revenge, and then turns into a really complicated friendship. And at the same time, you've also got all the kind of big, bold action that you might see in like classic 80s movies, great 80s comics. So if you like things like, Frank Miller, if you like American Flag, 2000 AD, kind of Judge Dredd, it's a lot of that sort of stuff going on, but also kind of lots of complex character dynamics. I like really playing with how people feel about themselves and exploring that, and how the relationships, and a lot of stuff about kind of masculinity and about family and grief and loss. So all these things in a book with lots of people punching with animal masks on.
I love
friendship between men. We've got friendship between men and women. We've got childhood trauma. We've got sibling grief. We've got skull jewelry given as friendship, important
a little
gifts.
pow,
Yeah.
So, jackets. One of the characters, Jack, is always exceptionally well dressed. Very, very, very focused on his shoes, though. That's a big thing that kind of keeps coming out. Yeah, it's like I wouldn't say there's something for everybody, but if you like stuff that goes a lot deeper, like Claire and I asked Claire like who she kind of saw me, where she saw me sitting like in the market of comics, like what sort of things. Because I don't think about myself that way. I don't really consider how my work fits in. And one thing's kind of Claire kind of brought was like Mark Miller, and I wouldn't say I'm a massive fan of his work overall, but I do a lot of the same things. I'm quite interested in some of the same areas, but I'm much more interested in the emotional life of these characters. Not so much like something horrible or kind of edgelordy. I'm much more interested in how can I explore what this would mean to someone to be involved in these things, and how it would change you and it would change your life, and then how that would affect relationships with everybody around you. And it's a much more interesting space to play, and it means that the action has a lot more meaning when it does happen.
Yeah. No,
I would say, if I can just caveat that, because I want to make sure that it's properly presented to the general readership. I would say that the Mark Miller readership will enjoy Wild Nature. I would not say that. Well, the edgelord stuff, as David said, is not there, and also perhaps the dickhead flavor is absent. So
I love the way you put that too.
People who enjoy Mark Miller comics will enjoy Wild Nature, but people who specifically do not enjoy or perhaps respect Mark Miller comics will also enjoy Wild Nature. It's like a blending thing.
I'm going to start using that in my vocabulary. The dickhead flavor is so awesome. I've never heard that before, and I love it. I love it. David, Swan is a total badass. I don't think we had the opportunity to really dive into kind of what went into his embodiment, like his creation. I mean, he's amazing at what he does, but he wants to get out. The world doesn't want to let him get out. The sport doesn't want to let him out. The fans don't want him to go. And then there's a voice inside of his head that's like, no, you're made for this. Like, what went into creating this character?
Really, I watched a lot of really trashy action films. There's not an awful lot of kind of inner life to anybody in them. And so The Running Man is like a really good example of a film I really like in a lot of ways, but there's lots of depth that's there that nothing, it's never explored. There's stuff about the world, the characters. And I just kept thinking that everybody just seems so glib about killing each other. There's not really much response to it. And I thought, so start with like, well, once kind of Claire and I started working on the more detailed notes, what the characters would be like. Why would you be like that? And I started thinking about like self-hate and for men, and how if you are, spoiler, there's stuff around abuse in this, and kind of parental abuse to an extent. And I was like, what does that leave you with? There's stuff that happened when I was younger, not like that, but that stayed with me and that affected me and like my self-esteem and where those self-doubts would come from. And so I thought, well, how about if I just manifest it really specifically? Because someone who is, actually, they're born to do something, they're so good at it, they've got the absolute instincts for all of it, but they don't really want to be that person. And inside, there's just that voice. And I think everybody's got that kind of dark voice going on that's telling you you're bad at stuff, that's telling you can't do things, or that tells you should do something that's really bad for you.
Okay, that's the one I was thinking. I'm like, when he's like the bad stuff, I was like, ooh, those aren't my dark thoughts.
Yeah, it's like going to do something that's really terrible choice a lot of the time. And I'm really fond of those terrible choices a lot in my life. And it's like, I had to grow out of it. I had to like kind of say to myself, I don't want to be that person. And I just thought I didn't want a narrator in the story. I didn't want someone explicitly talking, but I wanted to show conflict in the way that voice can have a character of its own, and it plays in something else in the world. And it means that there's always that kind of dissonance between what the reader sees the character doing and then what you're meant to feel about it. So it should feel kind of challenging. That was like, I think when we spoke first time, Cody, you were talking about like the opening is really dramatic and it's this kind of really exciting battle. And then Swan takes his mask off and he's trying to decide, is this what he wants to do? Does he want to kill this person in front of him? He's basically saying, I'm not like you. And if like, I'm not like you, then what am I like? You know, what is it that makes me me? And I just thought that was a really interesting thing to do in the middle of all this chaos.
It's powerful.
There's just a much bigger thing going on for that person than just, am I going to kill you and win the game? What am I choosing to do instead? So that Swan just kind of came out of that initial idea. And then it allows, and obviously with the title Wild Nature as well, I was able to start thinking about, well, what could be all the different ways you express that? And how can I start showing over the course of this really long story how he does things or how he behaves that's actually who he is, and that he's maybe lying to himself or he's being lied to. So it was, how can I work through all those things till I came to a kind of more satisfactory conclusion, I guess. He's been a personal journey for me to work on as well.
I love it. Claire, what was some of your initial thoughts when you first joined as editor?
Gosh, it's been a while now because I just looked at the first emails that we exchanged. I actually can't find the first email, but the first invoice that I sent to David was in January of 2020. So it's been a long time. I could connect with the intentions for the story because I've also watched all of those 80s trashy movies and enjoyed them and thought the same thing, is essentially like, what is this guy really thinking as he blows away the goons? My job is to be somewhat critical. I don't want to like bring all of that right in and be like, here's what he was doing wrong. So this is a tricky question for me to answer diplomatically. But yeah, I liked,
That's okay. You don't need to be diplomatic. It's fine.
David's like, take off the gloves. I want to hear it.
Well, okay. So the first outline that he sent was very linear. It was very like, bam, bam, bam. He goes here. He goes here. He goes here. He goes here. And it had legs, but it didn't have the same kind, like, because we're talking about adding psychology to action blockbuster type stuff, you need the same kind of like backstepping in the actual plot that will allow for backstepping in the mind of the character, like the additional layers and levels and detours and mistakes and things that you try and go wrong. So we needed to like unpeel the thematic intentions in order to more fully create the plotted ones. The characters, there's a character document as well. They were pretty strong. Like David had a very good idea of like the kinds of people that he wanted to be dealing with and the way, like the basic ways that he wanted them to interact with each other, which is good because not everybody has that immediately. Sometimes they just know what they want them to do, not how they want to affect each other. But we did do a lot of like background workshopping from the initial character profiles. Actually, I have an ebook, a workbook called Writing Better Characters, which several creators have told me is very useful. That is based on the questions that I wrote for David, specifically for Wild Nature, for the development of the
that's so cool. That's awesome.
And how to like build more flesh onto their conceptual bones that would directly allow us to flesh out the plot and to help David know what the characters would do here and when, and like how to make it more complicated and more interesting based specifically on what these characters are like. So the form that the thing is in when you read it, very, very different to the initial outline. And it really couldn't have existed without the character work that David did, looking at what he wanted them to be like and how he wanted them to feel, and like putting in all kinds of detailed thought that doesn't actually make it onto the page. Like one of the questions was like, what is the shortest shorts that this character would wear for everyone? And I don't think anyone wears shorts. Can you
picture Swan in like juicy hot pants though? You know, hot pink, you know.
But it's the kind of question that you need to be able to answer for yourself so that you know, like it gives you an inkling of what a person is like when you know the shortest they'll go, you know? Mm-hmm. And if you can do that, then you can feel what kind of response they'd have in this or that situation, and that can tell you where an event will go and so on and so on. So yeah, it was a really strong developmental process actually for me as well as for David, I think.
I've never had the opportunity to kind of dive into this process, so I really appreciate that, because like for me, it almost feels like writers are like a dam, and then an editor comes in there with and pokes holes in the dam to let that water flow and let that water flow better. You know what I mean? Like editors are so crucial to the process, and thank you for like kind of shining a spotlight on that. David, what was your thoughts? You know, when you took this project and you finally got a second pair of eyes on it and you started opening up more and more.
The reason I started looking for an editor was kind of what actually Claire was saying, that there was ideas were legs in a lot of the ideas, but I just wasn't able to kind of get to what was going to make them work or make them resonate or feel like something I would want to read. I was like, they were kind of okay things going on, and I kind of got stuff by accident rather than by design. So when we did that process, and actually I remember the email you sent back, Claire, which I think your comment was, "It's okay." It's okay. And it was reassuring and yet somehow damning. The thing was, but what you said,
this is why I tried to be diplomatic.
Sitting at the table, like, what does that mean?
But things, but it was true. She was right, and it's like how I looked at it, it's okay, and that's what I didn't want it to be. I wanted it to not be okay. I wanted it to be something that either I felt like really strongly I wanted to do or not do. And I just finished a book that I was proud of, but I wanted the next thing to be better, and I wanted, like, how can I grow? So I remember that, and I remember agreeing, and everything you said to me, I remember agreeing with. I'm not especially touchy about feedback like that. I think I'd rather someone just tells me. I might disagree, but I'll just ask the question, like, you know, why did you say that? Why did you think that? And then if someone can explain it to me, I'm like, okay, cool, let's see how that works, and I'll give it a try. I'll figure it out. And, you know, I don't think as much like Claire kind of suggested that I normally didn't use or go with or figure out a way of integrating. But for me, what was great was it forced me out of the rigid path of trying to insert character into plot, which is where things keep going wrong. Like, you're so obsessed about or I was so obsessed about, I want these moments to happen, but those moments weren't being earned, and I was having to be really convoluted just to get to them. Yeah. Like, you know, weird not jumps in logic, but stuff that just felt like I was shoehorning because I had a cool idea. And by working through that process, like, particularly with Jack, is that he became a much more interesting character. Yeah. He was pretty basic in a lot of ways. He was kind of based in Willem Dafoe, and he was a bit cackling. And that's really that was his whole gig. He was well dressed and he was cackling. And he became this much more vulnerable, understandable, and actually in a lot of ways he's more sympathetic throughout the story than you first would think, because and I'm trying not to spoil anything for people who do want to read it, but he's got Swan's best interest in heart more than it first seems. And I wouldn't have done that without this exercise, because I started thinking more about what is the relationship here. what can appear like someone taking advantage actually sometimes isn't really designed that way. So that was one thing. And then probably the other, what I stopped doing was I stopped thinking in terms of plot, and I thought purely in terms of how I could bring, and it was something Claire said, like, how can we create situations to bring these characters together and
I
then
love
see them
that.
have conflict because of the things that make them different. And like, as soon as I had that, I never again struggled for any idea for what to do in the next scene, ever. I would just stop and go, right, where do they go next as a relationship? And how will that moment come around? And one of the bigger plot turns, which I won't spoil, which is basically what kind of happens about halfway through the second volume, was purely came out of the characters' motivations, and it sets up everything in the second half of the whole story. And it's one small moment that leads to this. And I remember being really proud when I wrote it down. I was like, yeah, that feels great. And then I said, yeah, that's great. And I was like, okay, this is working. So yeah, it's changing mindset, and it's easy to think in plot terms, because it can be very rigid. And a lot of the writers I do enjoy, they like working that really kind of detailed plot and stuff that goes with it. But the stories can feel a little bit dead to read. You don't get the same living, breathing element of it. But I generally don't know where Wild Nature is going when I'm writing it. I'm just thinking about, this would be cool. Maybe they'll say this. Maybe this will happen. The only thing I ever had in mind that stayed all the way through was a scene. Is the scene right at the end? Is the kind of the big climactic conflict? Is the only thing I knew. And when I wrote that, and when I finished kind of inking it the other week, the execution of that, it means something completely different to what it would have when I originally started it. Because there's much more in the emotional stakes of what's going on for the characters. And for all of them, there's nobody in the book, I hope anyway, there's no one in the book you would look at and go, I don't get why they're the way they are, or what they care about, or what's on the line for these people. And I'm really proud looking back at that. It's been a lot of work on it, but like everything that Claire and I have done together, it's opened my eyes about how I should approach story. But it just kind of freed me up. That's a very long answer to a pretty simple question, but it freed me up to stop worrying about plot. Plot will make itself obvious, because you'll have these brilliant character moments, and the character moments will give you far better plot than anything else.
I mean, wow, like that just goes to show you, like, because like I don't know, like for me, like I would think plot would be what you would start with, and like to hear like your reasoning why you shouldn't do that, like it just opens your mind as to why you need an editor for your project, right? Like the importance of having an editor and someone who knows what they're doing to kind of help guide you. Real quick, we have B-Dub over on Twitch saying we getting geekly in here, and then our good friend the Moist Boy subscribing for 10 months. Thank you guys for that. Let's go ahead and pull up some of this art though, because not only do you tell a great story, you illustrate a beautiful story as well. I love these interiors. I love your style, and I think dude, it's an injustice not to pull up some of these interiors and take a look at them. So right here is a beautiful shot. Who are we looking at?
It's a rabbit. So Rabbit is one of the animals who the team Swan used to lead in Wild Nature. And Rabbit is kind of based on a few people, but I just wanted to have like a genuine badass in the story. She was the first character I ever drew for the story. First thing I came up with. She's got a little stitch on her left eye, which has stayed through all the versions of it. And I just liked her. She's Puerto Rican. She's called Michelle Cotto. And like, her whole thing is like she loves combat. She loves being involved in the thrill of the hunt and really showing and being competitive. And she's based on a boxer I love called Miguel Cotto. Very, very, very literal in a lot of ways with my designs. But he was very similar. He liked being in the heat of battle and he did all that sort of stuff. And I loved watching him when he was that active. And I thought, well, I want a really cool woman in this. I want to take inspiration from the people that I love. And then, you got Michelle Rodriguez, who I love as well, a Mexican actress. I think she's Mexican. I never remember. I don't remember who anybody is or where they're from anymore. I was just building all these people together and then thinking, well, how can I find something unique in that? And yeah, she's this joyful rush of a character that she's just totally in the moment with everything she wants to do. All she cares about is having a great fight. And like the stuff that she puts forward. She's got the most honor of everybody in the story as well. So she really believes in doing the right thing and, and behaving correctly to your opponent. So great fun and like great visuals. She's been like the lead visual for the last 2 Kickstarter campaigns because I just love how she looks.
The way that David took and ran with my notes really shows in Rabbit, I think, because that she's not like part of the primary cast. She's like first or second ring of supporting, but the friendship that he's written in for her and Swan is so interesting and so genuine. It's like you don't get it a lot of places. You really don't get. Honestly, friendship at large is not generally written as well as I think that David does it. The Jack and Swan relationship has come out so nicely, and that's just the main one. But the friendship with Rabbit, it's not necessary for the story. Like, you don't have to have. She could just be there to look cool, but it is there, and it becomes integral for the emotional content of the story and for the tone of the story and the thematic resonance of the story. I'm impressed. If I'm impressed.
Yeah. I think,
I think you will be too.
I think, building onto that, instead of just having a cool looking character, having that character mean something to the story, just adds so much, layer and texture to that story. And I think, crafting a friendship is something that is hard to do with a lot of books that I read. So that, and I think the relationship that Swan and Rabbit have is interesting. David, you do an outstanding job with character development, man.
Thank you. I mean, it's taking the time to think of where I want people to go. Every event that happens to us in our lives changes you or shifts you in some way or makes your perceptions different. And even like what you were saying there, Claire, about friendship, like your interactions with other people and the thing you get from them, there's lots of interesting ways of showing that. And I think with Rabbit and Swan particularly, a lot of their friendship is explored almost passively. Their interactions are fairly brief, but they've got there's a lot of meaning of the way that they respect each other. And that's the thing, and it's respect. There's not like big brother kind of thing going on where he's like, I'm gonna look after you. They're very much equals in the moments they're kind of in the page together. And it was fun writing them. And I said she gets to be on the front cover with equal billing with Swan for Wild Nature 3.
She's a little bit like, this is maybe a cheap comparison, but I'm gonna do it for the views. She's kind of the Vegeta.
Okay.
Like, you'd think that it would be Fox, but it's not. It's Rabbit, really. The way that her story is struck, like as David said, they are quite brief interactions, her and Swan, but they turn events so nicely in like their import and their impact. It's very similar to the way that the redemption story of Vegeta is structured in Dragon Ball Z, which I genuinely think is very solid storytelling. That particular arc, it's done like in small little bumps, small moments, quite spaced out, but very legible. I think it's similar.
So was that intentional though, to kind of have Fox, like readers maybe think Fox was the Vegeta and then have it be Rabbit the entire time?
So I have to be honest, I'm not familiar with the reference. Broadly, I'm not even going to try and explain why. I just am not familiar with it. But I get what Claire's pointing to. I think so with Fox in particular. There's that thing of like who appears to be a villain or an antagonist to some way. There's a temptation. Do you make them more sympathetic? Do they have that moment where they turn around and whatever they realize they're ill? And I didn't think that was very interesting for Fox. Fox is driven by other insecurities which are never explained openly in the book. So there's more going on there. And not everybody gets to be redeemed, and not everybody gets to the arc. And I don't think if I end up doing another Wild Nature at some point, there might be something for him. There might be something I explore that character. But I don't think in this story, kind of what I built, I wanted other characters to have those moments. I wanted those kind of moments of reckoning where they came out differently from it. But yeah, I think it's the tempting thing that the person that appears to be the main physical antagonist of the story would be the one where they're like, oh, I see the error of my ways. And I just didn't think that's not his moment. The story's really about Swan kind of going through that, and there's lots of other people having their own little arcs within it.
See how original he is? What a storyteller. You're original. You should be proud of that.
Yeah, and I love this interior right here. I mean, as not only the writer, but also the artist, I mean, what kind of goes into some of your, creative process when you're designing a page?
The way I work now is like a version of the Marvel method, but for me, I write a fairly loose outline. I just kind of figure out. I usually write a lot of dialogue that I then don't use. Write tons of stuff out. Figure out like what are the key things I want to happen to the characters. I don't think too much about action initially, and then I just start putting ideas down the page, and then I start writing in pencil what I think the dialogue should be for each of those moments. And if I by working that way, I can be much more fluid and flexible. I just put lots of ideas down the page, and I cut some panels out, maybe blow a few up, and I find those moments that really work for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the main thing I always come back to is like, what do I want the emotion to be of that page? There's a lot of action in the book, but there's very little of it that is just action for the sake of it. And I choose moments that are meant to feel really impactful, and that should, in some cases, like in this page, make you squeamish.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens is awful on every level. There's an awful lot of claret on that page everywhere. So that I saved up a lot of energy till I did those moments. But so I'll spend a lot of time on that, and then I'll think kind of carefully about what I'm going to take the reader through, how they're going to see the page, and then how's it going to connect from the previous into the following. So I'm just trying to get that flow all the way through. And then once I'm kind of roughly happy with it, I'll pencil maybe 20 or 30 pages for each kind of chapter block, send it over to Claire, and then kind of get those notes back. How does this hang together? That makes it sound like a very tidy process, because it's not. There'll usually be a bit more back and forth. There'll be some other stuff I might come up with. And I think certainly for the volume 2 and 3, I remember I sent you like a full outline of how I saw the whole thing going. And then I started changing it once I started working on it, because that's much more interesting. I'm going to do this instead. Which it was. Volume 1's got a scene set in Thailand, which was never in the original plan, was never something I'd even thought about. I didn't have that history in place for the characters, but I had a dream about Thailand, and I dreamt of the kind of the neon lights and all that stuff. Never been to Thailand, it was just in my head. I must have been watching like a movie or something. And I thought, I want to write something there. I want to set a moment in this world. And I thought, well, what happens in Thailand? And then I just went from there, built out. What would it mean to the characters? Why would they be there? What would it let me talk about? So it's a really comfortable process for that, because it means that everything's open to me. So it doesn't matter where I am on the page. If I have a better idea, I just scrap it because I'm the writer. I don't have to worry. And just say, actually, this scene will be much better. I've killed pages entirely. This will be a quick ramble. But the original version of Wild Nature 3 was going to be probably 160 pages long, which was just way too long. It was really self-indulgent. There was like a whole bunch of it was very Frank Miller, lots of 2 panels on a page. And I looked at it, I thought, this is ridiculous, and it's not that story. So I just was brutal on myself. I went, right, I'm going to spend a weekend and I'm going to get this down to 128. And it was much better. It was much better because of it. But because I made those choices, I had that control, and I have this way of working, I can just work on the fly. I can come up with new stuff. I can rewrite scenes, and I can change the meaning of stuff really quickly as well. So it's a very open way of working. I'm very lucky that I can do both, because I don't think this would be fun for an artist to work on with me working that way.
I really, really love, I'm a sucker for like sound effects like this. And the way, like the crunch, you have it like broken up in the letters. That is so cool. Your attention to detail is just phenomenal. Like the head stomp, the scrunch. Like this is beautiful, David.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm also very proud of them. If you go down, Bird when he's on his knees and the Yabrot Mana. I was very proud of the phonetic spelling. I just like that. I like the effect of it, because it suddenly puts you in the world in a different way. It's forcing you to engage with the words differently.
Yeah, this is so cool.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead and check out some more of this too. Claire, I mean, so your book, where can people find that? The ebook that you were talking about earlier.
The workbook. It's
Yes.
on my Gumroad. It's just a digital thing.
Well, I have to update the description for that to include that. That is so cool. And you said that that came from your interaction with David?
Yeah, I went to a cafe. I reread the outline and the character profiles, and I wrote down a bunch of questions that I thought David probably hadn't asked himself, to force that like creative looseness that helps break from linearity. So some of them are kind of goofy, like the shorts one, but purposefully, because it doesn't only like break the tension with, you know, the serious creative stuff, like, oh, I should only be thinking of it like this in noble terms, but it also it just gives you additional insight. But then some are more practically based, like things that will almost certainly make it into a book, like how does this character stand when they're waiting for something? How do they talk to children? Is it different to how they talk to adults? Just like basic psychological persona-based questions that I encourage the creative to answer. Like, you don't have to answer every question. You don't have to answer them at length. It can just be like an immediate response thing, or you can go really long and like put down your thoughts. Basically, there's a page per question. There's a big box that you can write your answer in or just think about it. And then I've also got like some explanation of why we're doing it this way. And after the questions, basically, I take you through the theory and process of turning your answers into something useful, into something cohesive, and how to look at the resources you've given yourself and how to cut them down, how to figure out what's useful, because not everything will be. Like, looking at the creative process as something that has to be constantly work worthy is very goofy. That's just going to make you tired and confused. Not everything that you think of is going to make it into the product. Not everything you think of is going to be good, even. Like, some of it's just going to be pointless and stupid. And that's fine, because then you just cut that bit off, and what you're left with is your best work. But if you don't do enough work, then you're left with just the work that you've done, and none of that. You can't always just only do your best work. You always have to do some pointless and stupid stuff. That's just how things work. So if you only do enough character work to get you to your first draft of your first idea, then that's all you're going to be able to do. You're not going to be able to go any further, because you don't have anywhere further to go, because you don't have anything to base that furtherness on. You have to work widely, not too widely. Don't get crazy. Don't get like stuck in how many second cousins someone has, if that's not relevant to the themes of your work. Like, if you're doing a story about family, then sure. But if you're doing a story about like a heist, then probably cousins won't matter. Caveat, obviously. Yeah, so I put it all together in a little process book, and all feedback has been good. So
that's so awesome. We'll make sure to update the description for that as well, because any tools to help people learn is always something I love promoting. And I love the idea of kind of, you know, taking your character from the outside and learning to like think like them and walk a mile in their shoe, and because I think that'll help you fully flesh out your story once you know your character, like fully diving into their mindset. That is such a unique approach to it. I'm still wondering, David, how short would Swan's shorts be if he could wear short shorts?
Swan famously has no sense of style, so they're incredibly short. They're actually, I don't have it to hand. There is a drawing of him wearing fairly short shorts when he's training. I just enjoy this, but it's kind of fun drawing a character who's not got any sense of style, because like, you can make really odd choices both with color, just like setup, and it's fun. Yeah, he would have short shorts. He'd have a whole bunch of horrible things on. He frequently does. I think most of what he wears is pretty garish, which was a nice thing to do. It's playful. It's nice spending that time in their head.
Exactly. Yeah.
I could picture some Daisy Dukes, you know.
The thing you said there, Claire, about if you've only got enough to work on, like to get that first draft done, and what I found through doing this process, and even like the couple of stories I've got in mind to do next, by working through those ideas, but just doing stuff that doesn't feel like it's taking you anywhere initially, you start coming up with better ideas for the story.
Yeah.
Because things that initially are just like, oh, that's a bit of a frippery, that was a waste of my time. You're actually, that's a really interesting idea. That's a conversation I want that person to have. And then it lets you do other things. And like the first version of your story, the first outline, will be at least in my experience of how I've written in the past, it'll be all plot, it'll be all focused on a really heavy-handed theme. And actually, the more complex ideas that come out from just exploring the world and the characters are much more powerful, but they're subtler. And there's much more space to play with. So if you're worrying about how am I going to write enough, in my case, for like an 120-page book, do that process, and you'll be fighting to cut things out. And that tends to be how I work. I don't think I'm good at writing short form anyway, but I'm certainly not after this.
Man, these interiors are just so gorgeous. I love this right here too. I never noticed until I zoomed in. You actually see the wasp, like their outline of the helmet in the pupils. Like that is your attention to detail is just so amazing, Dave.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think I'll need to do something to make the colors in that so it's even more obvious. But yeah, I mean, these are the pre-color. I've not finished coloring the pages fully. But yeah, no, I love that. And I love stuff like this. It's like, it was really, because the story is able to go so wide and you get to talk about that inner life thing, I was able to draw sequences that wouldn't fit in the original more grounded story. That was much more level and grim and gritty, etc. This allows me to be a lot more playful and expressive with the ideas. And like most of the people, obviously some of them have been combatants in Wild Nature. There's a couple that appeared in previous parts of the story that have not done well at Swan's hands. So like, there's lots of little kind of cameo callbacks and potential story ideas just in how these people look.
This is awesome. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to show these images. Like, these interiors are gorgeous. And everyone who is watching, once again, right here is the Kickstarter going live. You said it was May 13th?
It's Saturday. It'll be Saturday, probably very early American time that it will go live, around about lunchtime in the UK.
So right here it is. And then what are we looking at? Can we get some prices for maybe the digital and the physical, like what people can expect?
Yeah. So I'll assume people are jumping in, they want to get the whole thing. So I'm pretty sure the full digital collection, I think it's £30, which will be like $34, $35. It's something like that. I have to go and double check. I can't remember that one off the top of my head because I'm all focused on the print ones because that's the one that cost me a fortune. So I think for the complete collection in hardback, it'll be £70, which is about $78. For the paperback collected full edition, it's £30, which will be about $35, $36. And I'm doing my best to keep shipping prices down, so I'm working through a few things to make that a bit easier. But there's things available at every level. If you just want to get Wild Nature 3 itself, I'll have to go and check the price on that one, but nothing's out of bounds. And you get, on one of the tiers, you can get all my books in digital for something like $45.
Wow.
I like making digital bundles. Digital backers usually get overlooked. They don't get treated as well as print backers, and I like to do the opposite because I've got some brilliant people who have backed me purely by digital, and they've sent me the nicest things, and I want to make sure they always feel that they're getting real value for money.
That's awesome. I love it. So, guys, after going through this and talking about the Kickstarter, what's next for you outside of Wild Nature? For the rest of 2023, Claire, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm just trying to think of what I'm allowed to talk about. No, I signed on to a secret project just the other day, so I can't tell you about that. I'm working on my next year's book, Green Snake. Showing a little bit of that on my Instagram every now and then. But I guess most of all, I'm just carrying on. Lots of editing all the time. I just finished notes today for the next cup of Jude Sarson's Cafe Suada. I've got some more Miskatonic High to get through. And I'm enjoying my involvement with the Cartoonist Co-op, which I believe you had Brandon on repping yesterday.
Yes, I need to get more of that on the show too. I was telling him, put some feelers out. Anybody from that wants to get on here and promote their work, I would love to make that happen.
Super. I'll pass that along for sure.
And you were pretty notorious too. After our interview, I started once I interviewed you and I knew your name, I seen you everywhere. You are everywhere. If I 9 times out of 10, if I interview someone, they've either talked to you about editing for them or you've been involved with the project for them. It's awesome to see your work just so much out there, Claire.
Thank you. I don't really I don't keep that's gonna sound like unpleasant, but I mentioned the ADHD before. Like, I don't really keep track of like how much work I'm doing. So that's kind of as funny to me as it is to anyone. I don't expect to be found everywhere. I really don't.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that too, because it's kind of like somewhat similar for me. I don't realize how many people I've talked to until someone starts bringing up names. I'm like, okay, I've had every one of those people on the show, and they're like, really? Like, like me and Brendan were talking about.
I can see the number up there, 375.
Yes. So, David, what about you though? 2023. You know, we're still kind of fresh in the year. Anything outside of Wild Nature? Maybe any more cons that you're attending?
Lots of cons. Got the big, kind of the UK's big three. I've got Glasgow in June, and then I've got the Lakes in September, the Lakes Festival, which I'd be desperate to get to. And then Thought Bubble, the big one for most UK creators to get out to meet people. So I'm getting those three, the few smaller ones just to make sure I'm out and about, get a chance to meet people. Yeah, getting Wild Nature finished. And then the thing I just grabbed it out of one of the boxes beside me. So my second.
Hold on 1 second. We're going to zoom you in for this one.
So this was my second book, The Grave, the first one I did on Kickstarter. It'll be its 5th anniversary next year. And so in the same way that I did for Decades, which was my last Kickstarter, that was my first book, I'm doing a remastered edition of it. And I'm going to tidy up the art, fix a few things that have always bothered me, and apply a lot of stuff that I've learned since working in Wild Nature and working with Claire. So Claire, that's probably going to come your way for notes. Probably.
Surprise!
So I'll be working on that. I want that to come out next year, do a nice hardback edition of it in the same way I did for Decades, and then working on my next book, which is called Her Hard-Boiled Heart, which is based on, well, it's a kind of semi-reboot of something, a couple of short stories I wrote a few years back. One of them, called Her, got made into a movie, which is coming out, I think, next year, called To a Cinder, which I've seen, it's really good. So I wanted to do a book that brought it back to life, and it's a feminist espionage noir.
Ooh.
And I didn't really do it justice the original way I approached it. It's fun, but it's light as a feather, and the stuff I wanted to explore in it, it was like, when I looked back at it, I thought, there's so much more I can do here. And I've got all these ideas for it, of this kind of big story that absorbs the original 2 shorts, and does something else with it. But I wanted to do something that was more focused on the women characters. By nature of the stuff I've been interested in, most of the things have been focused on men, and toxicity that comes out of it, and particularly grief and trauma. And I thought, well, why not do that for women instead? That'd be a nice change. And
write a happy story, Dave.
They're not my gig. It kind of sort of. So that'll be my next big thing. So I'm just, as soon as Wild Nature's finished, I told myself I wasn't allowed to work on it until Wild Nature was fully inked, because otherwise I just get distracted and I slow myself down. But I'm looking forward to that, and I will, again, probably pestering Claire for help on that one as well.
That is so awesome. So you guys have both been on the show before. We always ask for a little bit of advice, but let's do things a little bit differently. Dave, we'll start with you, and what we'll do is we'll ask the importance of having an editor, and then for Claire, I'd like to talk about how you could approach an editor and build a relationship, like the proper way to go about doing that.
So if I answer the first bit, the importance, like, especially as you're a developing writer, is that you need that first audience, and you need someone who brings a different taste to it. So ideally you want to pick someone who doesn't see the world the exact way you do. I could see from like what Claire had posted about on her Twitter and her Instagram in the past that we shared some tastes. There were some things we both enjoyed, but Claire enjoyed them from a very different perspective, which I thought, that's great. That's what I need. I need someone who can ask those questions. So I say that's the first thing. You get someone who's got ideally different tastes, some different attitudes or mindset about work, or about the stories they enjoy and why they enjoy them. And I think the other thing, and if you pick the right editor, they're like a cheerleader for you as well, because they push you to try something else. They push you to go further with an idea, or they push you to for me, in this case, how can I use my art in different ways? How can I be bolder, and how can I make different choices? You don't do that stuff on your own. It's easy. Well, some people do, but very few of us do. So you want someone who kind of knocks you out of that complacency sometimes, that here's a better idea. Have you thought about this line? So I would say anybody that's developing, there's probably a point where you get confident enough or capable enough, or you're a good enough inner critic that maybe you don't need an editor the same way. But I think having one is invaluable because you're getting that first set of eyes on the story. You're getting someone who's challenging it around what is this really about? What do you really want to say? And I just think it's invaluable when you're figuring out, the story at the beginning. I would say to anybody, make sure you work with an editor at least once in your comic making career.
That's awesome. Claire, what about you, though? For anyone who's looking to approach an editor, what would be the proper way to do so and build like a nice relationship from the start?
Well, I guess the basics are just approach them the way that they make it clear that they are available to be approached. Like, I have a website. I have a contact form on my website. I also have my email out there. So for me, I prefer, if it's someone that I don't know, just they send me an email and set out like, I want to do this. I would like to help. Like, I don't need tons of information. I've got some cues for. Sorry, my screen just went. I've got some cues for the kinds of stuff that would be helpful to be to be told right away on said website, but they're not necessary. I'm not very demanding because I know it's scary, and I want people to feel comfortable because like it's not only scary to approach a person, it's scary to be edited. So that's two scary things. So I want to make it as smooth and unscary as possible. Some people don't have websites. Some people, which I think is a mistake on their part. If you're an editor, you should have a website. People need to know how they can get to you. But yeah, if they don't have a website, but they do make it clear that they are in the market for clients, then just approach them on whatever platform they're making that clear. And yeah, just be normal as possible. I don't mean like you have to hit some kind of regular person formality, but just think to yourself, this is a person. How would I like it if someone asked me for this help? And do it that way. It's not hard. Like, it's not a very challenging process. It's just saying, hey, I'm trying to do this. I want to do it as best I can, and I think that you could help me. Can you? And if they can, then they will. And if they can't, then now you know. I think just hitting it from the start, going through the proper protocol is the best route. That shows you have respect for the process, respect for the editor, and that you're serious about this. Some awesome advice there from you too. Now, we end the podcast, like I was saying backstage, with what you guys are consuming outside of creating. So, David, Claire, what are you guys reading? What are you watching? If you guys play video games, what are you gaming on? Like, tell us, what you guys are doing outside of creating. After you, David. You're the star today.
Thank you. Last comic I read that I really loved was Zoe Thorogood's It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth, which is just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful book, kind of autobiography. So clever. I bought The Impending Blindness of Billie Scott. I was thinking about the tennis player. What bizarre comparison. So read that after the first thought bubble I went to, loved it, and this is even better. Just absolutely beautiful storytelling. The art's amazing. It's quite unusual to get to watch someone who's developing in their career and they're basically brilliant right now. It's quite nice seeing that you're gonna, how much better are you going to be in 5 years? It's just absolutely mind blowing. The other one which I've just started reading is one of my comics buddies, Stephen Ingram. So an indie book called Burn With Me. Stephen's stuff's really cool, kind of quite gritty, grounded, but very character based. If you want to pick some of the stuff up, Left is my favorite of his books. So I'm looking forward to properly getting through that. And then I haven't had time to watch any TV at all except for true crime stuff, which probably bad for me, but it does inspire stories. So that's me. What about you, Claire?
Oh, I've been rereading a lot of Witchblade, another early Top Cow, because plug. I just started a podcast of my own with Tegan O'Neill.
Congratulations!
Called Utter Madness. Thank you. Where we talk about like the first 10, 15 years of Top Cow, because we both have an enduring interest. And it's not a company that gets a lot of real critical appraisal. We're fixing that. But I just today read Sloan Lung's Prism Stalker 2, which isn't out yet. It's out in 2 months. But
no big deal.
You can pre-order. It's really good. It's really, really good. Psychedelic, hardcore, emotional. It's pretty much all about shame and approaching shame and figuring out who you are inside and outside of it. Very adept work. Definite recommendation. Sloan, by the way, the founder of the Cartoonist Co-op. So maybe you'll be talking soon.
Hey. Can I say too, the name of your podcast is like brilliant, utter badness. Like that is brilliant. That is perfect. Did you come up with that name?
I think it was Tegan. I don't remember for sure, because it's definitely something that either of us could have done. Yeah. I haven't started it yet, but I just got this book in the post because I have a subscription to Perrin Press. They send you a new translated. I don't think they're always European, but they're novellas, short novels that have been translated into English. Only just. They're all brilliant. And having a subscription is great because it means I don't have to think about it. Just every 3 months or so, I get this wonderful literature in the post, and I just read it and feel expanded and marvelous, and it's incredibly practical. And what was the other thing? TV. I just finished today watching a very stupid show, Messiah. Absolute rubbish. Kind of fun, but it was okay. And then I started watching what is this thing called? The Diplomat, which is kind of fun. It's all right. I like a lot of intrigue, and I like people taking things very seriously that are a great deal of nonsense. I like some opera in my down-to-earth mystery show. I keep trying to finish. I just started a show called Hot Skull, which is Turkish, which means I can't watch it while I'm working because I can't read it and read at the same time. It's got subtitles, which is a problem. So I've been having to supplement my diet with English language trash instead of Turkish language interesting cyberpunk linguist fiction. What can you do?
No, I love that, and I think it's so cool about the literature that's getting translated. There's so much good out there that most of us will never touch because we don't have that. We either don't have the means of translating it ourselves or the buying it. And I forgot what it is, but there's so much of the world that is untouched, like in terms of like us being able to read, just because it's in a different language. Like only 10 or 20% of the world speaks English. I might be wrong on that number.
I don't know, but it shouldn't be higher than that, should it? Like it wouldn't be natural or ethical for the number to be higher.
Yeah, and in that same aspect, think about this: like your guys' work is only touching like 10 or 20% of the world because the other 80%, doesn't read English. So it's like such a crazy number to think about. But I think on that note, this would be a perfect time for us to end the podcast. Guys, if you are watching, right here is the link. Let's sign up and get this to 100 pre-launch followers by today. You have until Friday before it goes live, and then time to get your wild nature on, guys. So with that being said, it has been a lovely, lovely Thursday. I hope you all have a fantastic day. But most importantly, guys, keep it geekly.